Hello, and welcome to our webinar in Reimagining QRIS for These Times, Our Learning Story. We will share the journey of revising our state's quality rating and improvement system in order to address the dual crises of the COVID-19 pandemic and systemic racism built into our education system. We feel that the updates to our QRIS system will better support the diverse and high-quality programs across Washington state, including programs that use learning stories. We hope that this presentation helps you to see the connection between your work as practitioners and our work in state policy.
Hi, my name is Sarah Ackerman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Quality Recognition Improvement System, or QRIS, Technical Services Specialist with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. I am joining you from Bonnie Lake, Washington, on the traditional land of the Puyallup people.
And hello, my name is Charlotte Campbell. I use she, her pronouns, and I am our QRIS Government and Partnerships Liaison with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. I live in Olympia, Washington, which is the traditional lands of the Stay-Chass people, now members of the Squaxin Island tribe.
So I'm really excited to be joining you to talk about both learning stories and QRIS today. When I first heard about this conference, I was really excited because learning stories is a method that is near and dear to my heart. So prior to working with early achievers, I was a teacher at a school in North Seattle. I was at this school that I first got introduced to learning stories, and it truly made a huge difference in my teaching practice and my relationship with families. I hope to see methods like this, methods that truly center the child, become more mainstream and used widely by early learning programs.
So I'm newer to learning stories, but as I've learned about this method of child evaluation, I've been really interested in its implications for early childhood education. I think it's such a lovely way to closely observe children's strengths and to consider their areas of proximal development. I would love to see learning stories become more widely known and used throughout our state.
Great. So today's topics that we're going to cover are our early achievers learning story, linking to learning stories, why QRIS matters, deciding to reimagine our QRIS, gathering to make change, learning stories within QRIS, and looking forward. So I'm going to kick off today's session by reading a learning story that we wrote about the evolution of the Early Achievers system. If you're not familiar, Early Achievers is the name of the QRIS here in Washington. Writing this learning story helped us to look at our own growth as a system and to keep us thinking about how we can continue to move this work forward. So if you're a visual learner like me and you prefer to read along, you can find a PDF of our learning story in the resources attached to this session. So, the Early Achievers system was created with the intention of expanding equitable access to high-quality early learning programs to all children in Washington. It was also intended to provide financial incentives and professional growth opportunities for early learning providers. While the system had seen positive and promising results over the years, the Early Achievers team at DCYF was still receiving feedback from participants about their struggles within the system. Not all providers felt that their philosophies were properly valued, and many struggled with the stress of in-person evaluation. Our team wanted to make some changes, but it was a complicated system and resources are limited. Then in the spring of 2020, DCYF was forced to push pause on our programming and address the global health crisis of COVID-19. At that time, our focus immediately shifted to the physical and mental well-being of providers, children, and families. We felt a sense of urgency to continue to support childcare providers most of whom were still open and serving families despite the dangers. In response to the crisis, we ceased in-person data collection, put ratings on hold, and encouraged providers to simply focus on health and safety. Once the initial shock of the pandemic wore off, we began to see this break in our programming as an opportunity to shift our practices to keep children and providers safe, and an opportunity to address the community concerns that had been raised over the years. This is where we began our Early Achievers revisions process. We started by considering our historical data, what was working and what wasn't working. What had we been hearing from participants, and what had we heard from people who chose to opt out? We also looked closely at how equitable our system was, with a particular focus on the participation experience of BIPOC early learning providers and the communities they serve. We came to the resounding conclusion that while our system was having some positive impacts on kids, we could do better. Feedback from the community highlighted 4 main areas where the Early Achievers system was problematic. A one-size-fits-all system for cookie-cutter programs, a rating process that did not allow providers to show their best work, a stressful and high-stakes data collection experience, and a process that lacked transparency. These were the areas where we knew we needed to make substantial changes. We quickly saw the need to pivot to a virtual system. This would not only meet the needs of providers during the pandemic, but would also alleviate the stress caused by the unannounced in-person rating, which providers regularly described as taxing and not indicative of their daily work. We also changed how we identify ourselves, from a quality rating improvement system to a quality recognition improvement system. We felt that this change in language was important. We wanted to shift the focus away from data and trying to get better to instead focus on the strengths that already exist within the field. We wanted our revised system to be a celebration of the unique contributions of providers. In order to be truly responsive and to honor the diversity of our stakeholders, we wanted to co-create our revised system as much as possible. We started by creating 7 work groups, each with a unique focus on a different aspect of our work. The work groups were comprised of DCYF staff, Cultivate Learning staff, Child Care Aware staff, Early Achievers and ECAP coaches, and early learning providers. Each of the work groups was tasked with creating a proposal for part of the new system using a shared equity framework. The work groups met bi-weekly across several months, working towards submitting a final proposal. Because participation in our work groups was limited, we knew that it was necessary to get broader feedback from the community. We've been sharing quarterly webinars in multiple languages, documenting the progress of our revisions work. Providers and coaches are invited to share their feedback or ideas in a survey or by emailing us directly. And moving forward, we will use this community feedback in conjunction with the work group proposals in order to finalize our revised system. As we begin to emerge from this pandemic, we hope to open back up into something better, a system that is flexible, inclusive, and supportive. Our goal is to continually improve the Early Achievers system for both providers and the children they serve. Okay, now don't worry if that was a lot of information to absorb. We're going to go into each of these sections of our learning story in detail. Okay, so the first place that we want to start is with making the connection between QRIS and learning stories. You might be wondering why a presentation about quality recognition and improvement systems, or QRIS, is here in a learning stories conference. We believe quality recognition systems should honor the work of all early learning providers, and that providers who use methods such as learning stories should be able to see themselves represented and valued within our system. We want to speak to the reflective change process we've undertaken to meet these concerns, as well as others. We also believe that early achievers and learning stories are linked by some common goals. The first, equitable education experiences for all children. As educators, we want all children to have a positive early learning experience and to have the things they need to grow and thrive. We're all working toward the same goal, positive outcomes for all children. The second, programs that see and value children's unique strengths. Not every child learns the same, and not every family receives information the same. We really appreciate that learning stories is an assessment method that honors that individuality. And three, relationships at the heart of every interaction. Learning stories is an assessment method that innately centers the relationship with the child and family. This is something that we at Early Achievers also value, and building relationships is a skill that we want to encourage in all of our participants. So in this next section, we want to discuss the benefits of a QRIS system and why it matters to children, families, and educators. The first and arguably the most important benefit of a QRIS is positive child outcomes. QRIS has been around for decades, but has gained a lot of traction in the last 15 years because of its positive impact on child outcomes. QRIS allows us to evaluate early learning programs using a common set of metrics, which in turn provides valuable information to parents when they're making a decision about which program to put their child in. Validation studies look at the effectiveness of QRIS, and they've been done in many states. While there are some limitations to these studies, most of the data shows quantifiable increases in child outcomes across a variety of educational domains. Here in Washington, the Washington State Institute for Public Policy released its validation study about early achievers in 2019. The WSIPP study found that enrollment in a pre-kindergarten site with a rating at or above quality is a significant positive indicator of greater kindergarten readiness for children in ECAP sites and for those with child care subsidy. This is particularly true for children that come from low income or other historically marginalized communities. So to summarize, data science shows that high quality early learning and QRIS systems help kids to thrive. Our systems are working and kids are benefiting. The next reason that QRIS matters for children and families is that it expands equitable access to childcare. One of the primary goals of early achievers is equitable access to high quality programming. In Washington State, participation in early achievers is a requirement in order to serve families using state subsidies. This helps to ensure that lower income families who use state subsidy are still receiving high quality care compared to families who can afford private pay programs. Despite this requirement, many families using subsidy are still unable to find high quality childcare. This is because extreme childcare deserts exist across the state, where the number of families needing subsidized childcare is not met by the number of providers offering that subsidized care. So the maps on this slide show extreme childcare access deserts in Washington State as of 2019. Extreme access deserts are an indicator of extreme need, yet they still don't represent the full unmet need for childcare in a community. While this may look like a relatively small area geographically, these areas are densely populated, and approximately 63% of Washington families live in a childcare desert. All children deserve access to high quality early learning, as well as a robust variety of program philosophies that meet the individual needs of families. The Early Achiever system hopes to support both an expansion in subsidy slots available to families and an expansion in the number of participants using progressive teaching models such as learning stories. Through the advocacy of childcare providers across the state, our legislature has heard that the cost of providing quality care to children and families has not been adequately met through subsidy rates in the past. We're excited that with the passing of the Fair Starts for Kids Act, we're able to increase subsidy rates and move towards a more equitable childcare system. We hope that with this increase in funding, even more programs will choose to join early achievers and provide subsidized care to Washington families. We also wanted to share a little bit of extra information about the details of childcare need in our state. DCYF recently released this interactive map in May of 2021. This map shows the estimated percentage of childcare and preschool need that is met across the state. The map can be sorted by county, legislative district, zip code, and age group. This map looks a little bit different than the map that we showed on the previous slide, but that's because the previous map showed a specific subset of this data, extreme childcare deserts for subsidized childcare. This map is more general and covers the needs of all childcare, both subsidized and private pay, across the state. Both of these maps serve to highlight the lack of care available to families. Despite our efforts to expand childcare options, most Washington counties are meeting below 40% of the estimated need for childcare in their area. If you want to explore this map more deeply, you can click on the link in the attached PDF of this PowerPoint. Not only do quality recognition and improvement systems make a difference for children and families, but they also help educators. Quality recognition systems provide a variety of supports to early learning programs in order to support their quality growth and meeting professional goals. Some of the supports that Early Achievers provides are: 1, personalized coaching. Coaching is one of our most successful and appreciated supports, according to our providers. Coaching allows for an early learning professional who is trained in relationship-based professional development to come into your program and provide support with goal setting, observations and feedback, and help with navigating our system. Many of our coaches have experience in a variety of assessment models, including learning stories, and are skilled at being flexible and responsive to meet the needs of programs. Communities of practice. These are group learning opportunities where different programs meet virtually or in person to discuss a variety of early learning topics. Communities of practice are a wonderful opportunity to work with and learn from teachers outside of your program. Professional development. Early Achievers participants have access to a variety of trainings and conferences to help them meet their professional goals. Many of these professional development trainings include customized follow-up from their coach to help them implement the concepts they learn in the training. Grants and scholarships. Teachers working in an Early Achievers program are eligible to receive grants that cover their tuition for certificates and associate's degrees in early childhood education. There are also scholarships available for the completion of bachelor's degrees and beyond. Customized program feedback. Participants who complete an Early Achievers rating receive customized feedback that they can use to help improve their program. And finally, financial incentives. In Washington, participants in Early Achievers who serve children on subsidy are eligible for yearly quality improvement awards, as well as a tiered reimbursement that acts as an increase to their base subsidy rate. We also have needs-based grants available on a yearly basis and other grants for specialized things such as dual language learning and equity. We understand the high cost of providing quality early learning, and we try to alleviate some of that cost with these incentives. We're also excited that we've been able to provide COVID-19 relief grants to providers serving families on subsidy. And the final reason that QRIS matters is that it helps teachers and parents to elevate their voice. Quality recognition systems provide an opportunity for activism because they're typically linked to state and federal early learning policy, particularly here in Washington. Participation in QRIS often provides opportunities for having an influence on policy that you might not otherwise have. While every person is encouraged to speak out about the needs of their program, QRIS participants are often the first place that policymakers look for feedback and ideas about how early learning is working in different communities. So I want to share a personal story about the pictures that you see on this slide. These are pictures of an advocacy opportunity that was made available to an Early Achievers participant that I was working with when I was a coach prior to coming to DCYF. I was approached and asked if I knew of an Early Achievers participant who would be willing to host a roundtable with Senator Patty Murray. The director of this program had shared with me that she was interested in advocacy opportunities, so I connected the director with Senator Murray's staff. We hosted a fantastic morning event where a variety of advocates, including teachers and parents, met to discuss the state of early learning with the senator. They were given the opportunity to share their thoughts and ideas with a highly influential policymaker. Participation in QRIS gave this director, along with her staff and families they serve, a platform to elevate their story. So I'm now going to pass it over to Charlotte to start digging deeper into the how and why of deciding to revise our system.
Thanks, Sarah. So as she shared, we have had a robust quality rating improvement system in place in Washington State for many years, and it has been written into our law since 2015. Our QRIS looked a lot like systems that have been developed across the United States. So even if you don't know the ins and outs of early achievers, you are probably familiar with the tools that we used as a part of our quality rating process: the Environment Rating Scale, or ERS, and the Classroom Assessment Scoring System, or CLAS. These tools are used in programs nationally and worldwide. And as Sarah pointed out, we were seeing results. Quality was improving. Nearly 3/4 of licensed providers in our state were participating in early achievers. As we shared earlier, our data showed that improving quality in early care and learning was leading to better child outcomes. So, why did we decide to reimagine our system? Well, as we continued to learn about anti-racism and equitable practices in education, we started to wonder, how are the tools that we use influenced by white supremacy? What does that mean in terms of defining or assessing and rating quality? Do our processes demonstrate the trust that we have in providers? Is Early Achievers living up to its claims of highlighting strengths and honoring quality? In what ways do different communities define quality that is not reflected in Early Achievers? And how can we have a system that honors the many ways that quality is reflected and delivered? Then, in the most unfortunate of circumstances, our world was hit with a pandemic, a wildly contagious virus that was spreading exponentially across the globe. Business as usual was not going to be possible for our Early Achievers system. We were forced to press pause and to think about how we would move forward. This gave us a chance to step back and look at the accomplishments of the past few years, but also it gave us an opportunity to act on changes that we had been feeling for a while. The pandemic shined a spotlight on the essential workforce that early care and education professionals truly are. They, you all, deserve a system that is supportive, that meets you where you are and takes you where you want to go, and that recognizes all of the work that you do every day to make lives better for children and families. We needed to revise our system to address the feedback that we had heard, that our system felt cookie cutter, that one-shot data collection was stressful and didn't showcase full quality, and that the process felt secretive or unclear. With all of this in mind, we made the decision to undergo a complete revision of our QRIS. In order to continue improvement in our system, we knew that we needed to bring together groups that represented the diversity of early care and learning in Washington State. Our groups consisted of partners and stakeholders from University of Washington, Child Care Aware of Washington, regional organizations, community members, and of course, early educators. As you can see in the graphic on the right, we had a variety of ways that people could participate, ranging from webinars to learn about the revisions process and provide feedback, all the way to joining a work group and really shaping the future of the system. The Early Achievers Racial Equity Advisory Group is positioned at the center of our cycle of group review. This group is an established group that meets on an ongoing basis and served as an advisory group to this process. We also ensured that each group was provided with a racial equity tool, a set of questions to consider as we planned and reviewed ideas or proposed changes to our system. I'll share a little more about this tool on the next slide. On the left, you'll see listed all of the work groups that were convened. Folks that joined these work groups really got into the nitty-gritty of our system, considering our current practices, reviewing data that we had and feedback that we'd heard, and making recommendations for moving forward. In order to advance racial equity and social justice, and to eventually become an anti-racist system, we had to work to make sure that all of our work groups were exploring inequities and working to design solutions using an equity lens. This is a copy of some of the questions we discussed in this revisions process. It is important to note that while we are implementing these tools in our process, we don't have all of the answers about what or how to change early achievers to become anti-racist. We need to continue to hear from communities and to work together to dig deeper into the structures, policies, and approaches in order to understand what changes we need to make and what supports we need to put in place. During this revisions process, while using an equity lens, we have focused on a few key things to best meet the needs of families and programs while supporting recovery from the pandemic. They include ensuring access to high-quality programming for children and families, providing supports to programs so they can continue to engage in continuous quality improvement, reducing barriers and encouraging participation in early achievers, and advancing racial equity and working to intentionally shift early achievers to an anti-racist quality recognition system. Here are some examples of feedback we've heard over the years and how our proposed changes address these challenges. First, we heard that the standards, processes, and expectations within early achievers felt like the state was trying to produce cookie-cutter early learning programs, and we know that a system cannot be one size fits all. To address this feedback, first, we did away with the environment rating scale and the classroom assessment scoring system. No more ERS and class as rating tools. In their place, we designed the program profile and video highlights. The program profile is a series of questions to help guide a provider in sharing their program strengths and their desired growth areas. The program profile recognizes sites for their specific educational approaches in a culturally sustaining and supportive framework. Video highlights allow sites to submit short videos of lessons or interactions they'd like to be evaluated on, tied to our Washington State Early Learning and Development Guidelines. This is a guiding document for birth to 5 development that was created by a large group of Washington State partners and stakeholders. Sites will now be recognized for how they deliver high-quality early learning services. We also worked to make sure that participants had additional choices regarding how their quality is recognized as they continue to reach higher and higher quality levels. We also heard that on-site data collection felt like a snapshot that only gave one chance to demonstrate full quality. We listened and proposed a process that is completed in phases over time. In our virtual system, the program profile is the first step. This helps to develop a coaching plan. The video highlights are next, and then if sites want to move beyond a level 3, they can opt in for records review or to submit additional video highlights. The point is that the provider has the power to showcase their program strengths, identify areas they want to focus on, and to select and submit examples of their quality over time rather than all at once. Finally, we heard that this early achiever system lacked transparency. So in our revised system, points can be seen before you submit a request for rating. The rating is then automatically generated when the request is made. We are also working on developing a community engagement process that will inform our ongoing system improvements. During this process, we focused on some key goals and outcomes. These goals aim to meet the input and feedback we've heard over the years from early learning professionals, as well as what we heard during the revisions process. Children, of course, are at the heart of everything that we do, and our redesigned system meets their needs by better supporting diverse providers. We know that shifting to a provider-led system will increase engagement and improve quality by focusing on individual goal areas. In order to do so, we have simplified and made our system easier to navigate. By shifting to a lower stakes quality recognition system, providing regular strengths-based data and feedback, and increasing transparency around rating, we are moving away from a gotcha evaluation process to one that is supportive and motivating. Our revised system centers culturally responsive practice, from teacher training and professional development to our coaching system to the creation of safe, welcoming, and culturally affirming early learning spaces. Our vision for the future is to have an anti-racist quality recognition system. We know that this will be an ongoing process, and I'll talk a little bit more about our long-term system improvement plans on the next slide. So as you can see, we are no longer a quality rating system. We are a quality recognition system. This name aligns with our mission to honor the wide variety of quality programming in our state and to support the authentic engagement and growth of early learning professionals. So you'll see that this graphic is an updated and simplified version of our workgroup slide. That's because our work does not end with these revisions. We recognize the need for ongoing engagement and continuous quality improvement. The work of raising tiny humans is never done, and our internal work will continue as well with our equity advisory group, as well as an ongoing values, processes, and engagement group, whose job is to strategize around long-term engagement and improvement strategies. In addition, we engage with on a regular basis with partner and stakeholder groups that represent a wide array of folks from across our state systems, whether that's early learning educators, coaches, families, and more. I'll now turn it back to Sarah, who's going to talk a little bit more about how learning stories align in our revised QRIS system and some opportunities to get involved.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. So one of the final things that we wanted to address in this presentation was how learning stories specifically can be seen and valued within our new QRIS system. We know that in the past, many programs who use non-standard assessment tools, such as learning stories, have been hesitant to join our system, so they choose to opt out. This was for a variety of reasons, but one of the things that we heard over and over was that these programs did not see their philosophies reflected in our quality standards, and they did not feel that their scores reflected the hard work they were putting in to serve children. We want to address this concern outright and to highlight some of the ways that programs who use learning stories can now show their quality and earn points within our quality recognition and improvement system. The Early Achievers system looks at quality standards and assigns points based on how a program demonstrates those quality standards. So this is just a short summary of some of the ways that a program like yours can earn points within our new revised system. The first quality standard area, and the one that makes up the bulk of the points for an early achievers level, is learning environments. In our new system, programs will use video highlights to share a short snippet of what's happening in their classroom. The best part about video highlights is the program can highlight whatever they want. For example, if you're a teacher that likes to read a student's learning stories to the class, like I used to when I was teaching, this is something that you could submit as a video highlight. The purpose of video highlights is to allow flexibility to show what's important to you. The next quality standard is child outcomes. Learning stories can count as both an informal or a formal assessment tool, depending on how you use them. If you simply use learning stories as an anecdotal tool to share with your parents, then your program can earn points for an informal assessment. If you show how your learning stories align and demonstrate growth in each of the major developmental domains, then your program can earn points for a formal assessment. The next quality standard area is curriculum and staff supports. This quality standard looks at things like ongoing coaching or mentorship, which can focus on any area a teacher wants, including learning stories. It also looks at things like assigned planning time, making sure your staff have time to write and share those wonderful learning stories can earn you points in this quality standard area. And the final quality standard area we'll look at is family engagement and partnership. This is the quality standard where it is perhaps easiest to see how learning stories can align, because learning stories are meant to be shared. By sharing your learning story with families and collaborating with families to better understand the growth of their child, your program can earn points in this quality standard area. So we hope that by looking at this overview, you can start to see how programs that use learning stories are better represented in our new system. We also hope that this excites you and makes you think about all the ways that you can showcase and celebrate your high quality practices within early achievers. Okay, looking forward. So now that you've learned about the connection between QRIS and learning stories and how QRIS is changing here in Washington, what can you do with this information? We want to support all educators and parents to get involved in local advocacy efforts. Here are some of the things that we can recommend. 1, learn about and join your local QRIS. In Washington, any licensed provider can join Early Achievers. If you're not serving families on subsidy, you can take your time to get to know our system before completing a rating. Our participants are often the first group of people that we go to for feedback and ideas. So if you are passionate about early learning, have strong feelings about what our system should look like, or just want to provide the best possible care to children, we encourage you to join us. 2, encourage your staff and families to get involved. Advocacy and systems work is often seen as something done only by directors or administrators. Policymakers want to hear from teachers and parents. As educators who use learning stories in your daily practice, you know and understand the power of storytelling. Encourage families to share their stories with you or directly with policymakers. Storytelling is often one of the most impactful advocacy tools that we have. If you see a problem or an opportunity within the system, speak up and share your thoughts. And the third, no matter what position you're in, if you're a policymaker, if you're a director, if you're a teacher, we encourage you to examine the systems you're a part of for equity and responsiveness to the communities that you serve. Our revisions work has given us a valuable opportunity to reflect and make changes. And we encourage anyone who cares about the well-being of children to do the same. Work with your community, collaborate with others, think outside the box, and most importantly, always strive toward equity. And if you're not from Washington, we encourage you to take these ideas back home and find out more about QRIS in your state. Finally, if you want to share your input or have questions about the Early Achievers revisions, you can participate in our provider or parent surveys, volunteer to join a work group, or email us directly. Both the website and our email address will be clickable if you download the PDF version of this PowerPoint. And if you contact our inbox, those emails come directly to our team, and Charlotte or I will respond personally to your message.
So thank you so much. We hope you're feeling inspired by the work that's happening in our state and excited to join us in our ongoing efforts to serve families and children more authentically. I appreciate you joining us today, and we hope to see you again on June 25th from 1 to 3 p.m., where we will be hosting a live Q&A session to talk more about early achievers, learning stories, and anything else you want to talk about.
I also want to thank you all for joining us. The work that you do is so important and has a tremendous impact on kids. And we appreciate you giving us some of your valuable time. Have a great rest of the day.